Hi, my name's Jackson and I'm talking to you from the Haiti Clinic. We're a drug and alcohol rehabilitation centre that provides residential and outpatient services for addicts and people suffering comorbid mental health issues. What I want to talk to you a little bit about today is, firstly, are you in the right place? You've come to the Haiti Clinic and you're making some inquiries. It's important to determine, are you in the right place? So what I want to talk to you about today is the cycle of addiction. Can you or your loved one identify with what we call the cycle of addiction? And to do this, I'm going to speak briefly about my personal experience in the cycle of addiction and see if you can identify a little bit. Firstly, when I use drugs, I would experience a tremendous amount of relief. I would have that first hit, I would have that first smoke, and I would immediately feel okay. Addicts will often say things like, okay, I can think now. Okay, I can go to work now. I can have sex now. Whatever it may be. Drugs give us immediate relief from our current circumstances. But because I'm a drug addict, and one of the symptoms of drug addiction is uncontrollable use, I may plan to have a small amount of drugs. I may plan to have a moderate amount of drugs. But that plan very rarely works out, and I nearly always end up using more. And as a direct result of simply how much drugs I'm using, I face some consequences. These consequences normally run a similar theme. The first one is relationships. I'm not very good at keeping the promises that I make. I'm sorry, honey, it's the last time, I'm not going to use again, I'll be there to pick up the kids, I promise I won't be high at Christmas Day, etc., etc. I make all these promises and I'm normally not very good at keeping them, and as a result my relationships suffer. Also, I can be difficult to live with. I'm unpredictable. Obviously, financially. As someone said to me once, drugs is an expensive hobby, son. And of course, most addicts will have some holes in their finances at some stage. Then there's work. Some people may be employed, however, they're definitely not working to the best of their ability or have the career that they once dreamt of. The other one is mental health. You can't consume copious amounts of drugs and not expect to affect your mental health. People will become depressed, they will become psychotic, they will often get diagnoses for things like bipolar or borderline personality disorder. Legal. You hang out there long enough and legal issues will follow drug use, whether it's committing crime or something as simple as drug driving. The net result of my drug use is pain. What initially provides me a tremendous amount of relief through the sheer volume of drug use ends up quite painful, and this will normally present in some sort of crisis. The wife has left, I've lost my job, I've been caught stealing money, and the addict will have what I call a pain-induced moment of clarity, which will come during a crisis of some sort. During this crisis, us addicts will have a moment of clarity. Something along the lines of, I've got to stop using, I've got to get back to work, I've got to be a better husband, I've just got to do better, I can't go on like this. And at this time, we'll make a bunch of promises. Not only to other people, but to ourselves. I'm going to stop using drugs, I'm only going to drink, I'm going to go back to work, I'm going to join the gym, I'm going to be a 9 to 5 man, and I'm finally going to live the life that I was meant to have. And we're quite believable during this time because we're sincere. We genuinely want to change. We genuinely see that drugs is causing a whole range of issues in our life, and we do want to change. And we're very believable. And family who love us will often buy into this and think, I think he's finally seized the error of his ways, he's got some new insight, I had a really good talk to him, I think things are going to change. This is usually followed by a period of abstinence. The good old-fashioned pull your head in, where we don't use for a while and we behave ourselves. And guess what? We get some relief. Phew, I almost ruined my life. But I'm back at work, I'm not using as much, My wife sent me back in the bedroom. I think it's going to be okay. I've managed to resurrect the wreckage of my life again. And we get some relief. But what I wasn't aware of, and the people around me were not aware of, is that an untreated drug addict who's merely abstaining from drugs, there's consequences of me not using drugs. I was acutely unaware of these for 15 years. Once again, these consequences run a similar theme. Within a short period of time, I get bored, I get restless, I often get depressed again, anxious, I simply do not cope. Me without drugs was quite painful. Now, was I consciously aware of this? No, I wasn't. I just knew that when I didn't have drugs, life didn't quite sparkle enough. And these emotional consequences would build and build and build, and I would reach that moment that all drug addicts reach. It's called the fuck it moment. Fuck it, I'm going to have a drink. Fuck it, I'm going to have a pipe. Fuck it, I'm going to go out tonight. And we have that first hit or that first drink, and once again it's immediate relief. And maybe that first time we don't get completely out of control. We manage to get home on time, we don't get into a fight, we don't spend the rent money. But then we use again the next week. And then next thing you know, we're using on Wednesday. And within a short period of time, we are back facing the consequences of our addiction. And life ends up quite painful again. We have another moment of clarity, a pain-induced moment of clarity. We make a new bunch of promises, and we just simply go round and round and round. Now, me personally, I was trapped in this cycle of addiction, which is short-term relief, pain, short-term relief, and pain for 15 years. For 15 years, I lurched from one crisis to the next, new plans for my life, new endeavours, new geographical location, new girlfriends, new jobs, new gym memberships, over and over and over again, attempting to resurrect my life and cure myself. But each and every time the result was the same, emotional pain followed by fuck it. Now, when that was explained to me, and I could relate to that cycle of addiction, it was very helpful because it explained 15 years of my life. And I could see how I'd been living in this cycle, just lurching from one crisis to the next. But that's only part of the issue. What was also explained to me, which took me time to accept, was that at no stage did I personally have any control of where I sat in this cycle of addiction. When the pain came, I had that delusional clarity. When the pain came, I had a compulsive desire to use drugs I could not control. At no time over 15 years was I in control of where I sat. I was literally in a washing machine called the cycle of addiction, being washed around and around and around and around. Now, when we identify with that, and we can see that either in ourselves or in our loved one, it's time to seriously consider addiction treatment. Because research and experience has showed us that people trapped in this cycle of addiction do not grow out of it. They do not mature out of it. There is also no rock bottom. There is no event that's going to make them suddenly immune to these emotional consequences. If you or your loved one can relate to this cycle of addiction and you can see you or yourselves in this cycle of addiction, it's time to seriously investigate addiction treatment. Thank you for listening.